I would just continue to be the secretary. It's not really what I want to do, but I will do it if there are no volunteers. Any volunteers? No volunteers. Okay. Unless I miss anybody, shout out. So I will continue to be secretary because I really don't want to dwell on that, honestly. Okay. So part of my charge as the chair was to start arranging meetings with all of our electeds. I obviously had to wait until November, actually later than that, until we knew who was going to be our state senator, who is going to be our congressperson, because those were, and also who was, because Gina Slitty, we knew was going to continue to be our assembly person. So, so I had to wait, and I did manage to get a meeting with Senator Martin. That is scheduled for tomorrow. That slot came up all of a sudden out of Senator Martin's office. We got lucky. Everybody's available. Meaning Ms. Bays, Ms. Epstein, Dr. Hines. And so I grabbed the slot because state aid discussions are in progress. And we want to get ourselves before him sooner rather than later. We also have a meeting with County Legislator Dirigi Whitten in early February. I have been in touch with, despite whatever is going on in the news, I've been in touch with Congressman Santos's office, and unless and until I hear otherwise from this task force or the school board, I am going to proceed with trying to schedule a meeting with him. Now, I know Larry, I don't know if Larry joined, Larry Greenstein informed me that the Nassau-Suffolk School Boards Association has made a decision amongst their board not to meet with Congressman Santos. And that's why I said until and unless either this task force or our school board decides otherwise, I'm going to proceed as we originally planned back in October to try to meet with the congressman. Any thoughts about that, or should I move on to the next thing? I don't see any hands. Right. Julie, yes?
I'll raise my hand. So I think in light of all that is going on, I think it would potentially be a wise recommendation of this committee to just say that we should pump the brakes and not make meeting with Mr. Santos a priority, right? We're having these conversations, not because we don't know where he's going to land. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and we are reaching out to our representation because we are asking for their help moving forward in this upcoming budget season and asking that they can help us move some of our priorities forward. And I feel that at this time, he may have other priorities or other items he's dealing with that we may not be a priority. So it may behoove us to just pause in that meeting with him and keep him on the docket for a later date when some of the turmoil is no longer swirling around him.
So the suggestion has been raised to pause the meeting, which wouldn't require me to reach out to the congressman's office because in reaching out to them several times, I've always had to be the one to initiate. I'm not hearing back. I don't know if his Douglaston office is open. Certainly there's a DC office, but the suggestion has been raised to pause. I need a majority of the people here to agree with that in order for that to be a recommendation to go to the board. So I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
No, I was saying I agree with that recommendation wholeheartedly.
Okay, so we have Julie, Ron. Does anybody disagree? Matt's giving a thumbs up. Diane's giving a thumbs up.
Deb, I had my hand raised and I was going to say that I concur. So I think you've got the majority.
Emily. Dr. Hines. I think I need a few more for a quorum here, a majority, I mean. Mr. Borda.
From my screen, it looks like everyone has actually raised thumbs up or a hand.
Emily, you didn't say my name, but it's Adrian and my thumb is up.
Yeah, I think
This is
Great.
Michelle.
I think we've all got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on. And so the remaining person with whom I need to schedule a meeting is with County Executive Blakeman. It was my understanding we were going to meet with our county legislator first to get the lay of the land in the county, and then set up something with Mr. Blakeman, which is the only reason why I haven't reached out to his office yet. Everybody okay with that? Since these are the priorities in meeting with our electeds. Okay. I did reach out to Senator Kaplan before she had to vacate her office. And one of the things I learned from her was that Senator Harckham was very instrumental in the electric bus mandate and the electric vehicle mandate overall in the state. And Senator Kaplan suggested that if we wanted to really get to the linchpin of the person who was pushing this, really, one of the people who's pushing it, that Senator Harckham would be a good person to talk to. So I followed up with that. I called his office and I found that yes, he's aware of all the issues. He's aware of the shortage. He's aware of the monetary issues. But in the course of the conversation, his aide offered to meet with our group or just our trustees virtually if we wanted to have a virtual meeting with him. So I'm coming back here to say, well, we have a senator clearly now who is in office and is working, but this is somebody who's the chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee, and his office has offered to meet with us if we are interested. And I would certainly go back to the school board and ask permission to do that, but given a recommendation from this group. So does this group feel the need for representation from this group to meet with the chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee? Or do you think we should go strictly through our own state senator and have him, lobby on our behalf? Just a thought I'm throwing out there. It was an invitation that was extended, and I'm not doing anything without the approval of this group and our full board. Julie?
I don't think that it hurts to have the conversation. I think if this is something that is a priority legislatively for us, it's always nice to be at the table, especially with the senators that are running the meetings. This is what happened with us in our conversations for foundation aid and why we were at the round table. It just keeps Port Washington in the forefront. So whether he comes to the legislative task force, which might be nice for him and the committee members to meet with, or whether he, just meets with trustees, I do think it would be advantageous for us to keep that loop open.
Okay. Does anybody agree? Again, this is something I need the support of this committee, the majority.
I just have a question.
Yes. I'm not seeing the little hands for some reason. So just jump in.
This was an initiative that Mrs. O'Hara brought up strongly,
Yes.
right? Would it be potential that Ms. O'Hara attend that
Sure.
meeting?
Sure.
And not to volunteer her, she's not on this call. But as far as the most knowledgeable and especially budget-wise of the benefits on both ends of it, I just feel like she adds more value than I would in that kind of discussion.
100%. And when I say representatives from this group, her name is Ms. Manuel now. Ms. Manuel and Dr. Hines are always on the guest list. They're always on the invitee list. And so one or both will or has attended a meeting, just so everybody here knows and the public knows. It's not just the 3 board members.
Okay.
So yeah, I would make
So I
sure
can
that
raise my hand, yes. Mhm.
everybody's saying yes. Okay, shall I move ahead? No objections to that?
I would just add, in the interest of collaboration, maybe we invite our senator to any conversation that takes place, just to incorporate, right? It doesn't have to be either or. I think it can be and. At least a courtesy.
That's a good point, Matt. I agree.
Okay. I will be sure to include Senator Martins in that invite list, or an aide, or whoever you decide to send. Okay, so after I spoke to Senator Kaplan's office and Senator Harkham's office, I reached out to Senator Mayer's office. There's a woman there named Georgia who was there for decades, who has since retired. I actually caught her 3 days before her retirement, to talk about financial aid, the foundation aid formula. Where does the state Senate land on that right now, since it kind of just stopped? And I was told, yeah, it's still stopped, at least in the state Senate, and that I should wait for the new Georgia, whoever that new hire was, and call back after January 20th. And I mentioned that Port Washington had been part of that conversation. We wanted to continue to be part of the conversation. I will note that in the interim, there are various groups who that are lobbying with the governor to revise the foundation aid formula. It doesn't seem like it's just Senator Mayer's office, that it is a priority for the New York State School Boards Association, and there was one other, state ed, the state ed department wants to start a series of bring in some experts to have the discussion as to what should be done and what the foundation aid formula should look like. So we're not alone, but I will continue to reach out to Senator Mayer's office to see if the state Senate is doing anything and to make sure that Port is part of that discussion. Any questions? Just wanted to give you an update on the conversations I've been having pursuant to this group's marching orders. Okay. So then we met with Assemblywoman Sility back in mid-December. Emily Beige, Julie Epstein, Dr. Hines, Kathy Manuel, and I were there along with Assemblywoman Sility and her legislative director, Jen Slagan. And we went over all the priorities as they pertain to her position as a state assembly person. And it was my impression that she is very aware of the issues. She understands the issues. She understands the issues as they relate to school boards in general and Port Washington in particular. She lives here in Port, so she's very in tune with what's going on here. She gave us some next steps, and those next steps would be to reach out to her in early February to see where things are with respect to what she's doing in the state assembly, and to schedule a Zoom follow-up call. We had asked her if she knew anybody in the Nassau County Civil Service Commission, and she said she was thinking of somebody and she would try to work on whether she could arrange for us to contact that person. She didn't say who it was, but we should follow up with her in February. So I'm giving her, Larry joined us. Hi, Larry. So I'm giving her that leeway and allowing her to do her thing. One of the things she suggested was that we as task force write to Governor Hochul about the electric bus mandate. And so I'm bringing that back to, and if I've forgotten anything or glossed over it too much, I hope that Julie or Emily will, and Dr. Hines will chime in. But does anybody think that writing a letter to the governor about the electric bus mandate is a good use of the board's time or our time? It was just a suggestion that came from Assemblywoman Sility, so I am passing it along. Diane is saying yes, she does.
Yeah. Why
Yes.
don't we?
What does everybody else think? Or what does the majority think?
Yeah, I agree with Diane. Can't hurt to write the letter.
Diane, Sarah,
It can't hurt to write the letter, but what you probably want to do is build a relationship with her Long Island representative, because again, that's where the work gets done. And all she does with letters is just figure how many she got. So if you want to have a substantive discussion and you want to actually understand their thinking and give them your thinking, you really want to go a little bit into the people who actually do the work.
Okay, so now we have letter or reach out to the Long Island representative,
Or both.
or both.
The letter
Yeah, I
never
think-
hurts, but if you really want to, dig into the topic, you want to find out who's working on it and try to contact those people directly.
So we did have a Long Island representative who actually, I believe, moved on. I think, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure he sent me an email before so I don't know who the new Long Island representative is, but that person is, Larry's correct. That is who we had contact with all of the times that we've had dealings with the governor, and we would send whatever letter we would send to the governor, we would send to this representative as well. So to make sure that they're the ones who got the relevant information and can direct us in the right direction. So,
Okay.
okay.
So it seems reasonable, just for me to proceed with that, or for somebody, for either Emily or Julie to proceed with that, so long as everybody is in agreement that we should be writing the letter. No objections? And no objections. I don't see anybody raising hand or putting anything in the chat. Okay, so I will move forward with that. I will find out who the current person, I was actually trying to find that out. And then I thought, you know what, I need to go to the task force first. And so I stopped, but I have permission here. Does anybody want to try to reach out to that individual or find out who that person is, or would you like me to do it? I don't want to assume anything.
I'm looking from last year, Deb. I'll see if I can find the information and share it with you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Okay. Dr. Hines, Julie, or Emily, and I don't know if I see Ms. Manuel here. Did I miss anything from our meeting with Assemblywoman Salidi? I really tried to encapsulate it.
I don't think you did. I think you did encapsulate it. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm getting thumbs up. Okay. So I think that covers all of the outreach that I have done, and that brings us up to date with respect to all of our electeds. So item number 5. So during the December board meeting, I had suggested to the full board that we take a deep dive into the charter that was drafted and adopted last year, and revise it a bit. I saw some stylistic things that I wanted to clean up just to make it cleaner, but also I saw some procedural issues that I wanted to tighten up so that this entity could be up and running pretty much at the beginning of the school year and not begin as late as November. And I realized that after going through the exercise in October and saying, you know, we had our first meeting in October, waiting until November is not a good idea. Let's get this task force solidified no later than the beginning of the school year. And so I started, I'm not doing it all by myself. I just took on the initiative with the board's approval. I started redlining the charter, and what you see here as an attachment to the agenda is that redline version. It's a living document. It's now public. It's up on the agenda. Only people with access to the document can, only people who have been permitted to access the document can edit it. And so the school board, the full board, is working on revising that document, really not changing the substance of it in terms of who sits on the task force or what the mission is. That none of that is being changed. It's mostly just making the wording a little more clear and changing some of the procedural aspects so that there is no confusion going forward as to when terms begin, when terms end, when applications should go out, how applications should go out, how long the public should have an application before it's due, that type of procedural stuff. And the full board asked me to share that with you so that you all know what's going on. I don't know that the full board expects anybody on this task force to help revise the charter. I think it's something, if you see something glaring or you would like to make a suggestion, the full board would be open to that. And we would like to hear from you, but nobody here is being asked to look at this thing and really, you know, change it from soup to nuts. It's as a courtesy, but also opening the doors of communication in case somebody sees something glaring that the full board does not see.
Just a logistics question for that. Even myself trying to go on the agenda to open it, because you said it transparency wise, it's available to anyone to look at.
Yes.
It's not letting me actually open the current link. So I don't know if there's a way, not
I see.
urgent.
Okay,
Um,
no, so that's probably because it's set for only the people, school board to be able to access that. I will figure out a way to allow you to access that before the next meeting. I'll send a new link or I will do something. I'm not technology savvy, so thank you for bringing that to my attention. Anybody else?
Deb, isn't the charter on the website under legislative task force? So there's really,
That's the actual charter. That's not the red line charter. That's not the work in progress.
that's so your red line, right? Because the board hasn't discussed making the changes yet. It's what you're proposing.
The board hasn't discussed the changes. The board had my red line version at the last board meeting.
Right, but we haven't discussed it.
Correct.
Right.
We have,
Okay,
right.
so
I
it's-
gave the board a deadline.
I
to
think you
look
could just
in.
mail the copy to the entire committee, whatever you sent it, right?
Yes, but I think there's a setting in Zoom.
There's a setting, you either have to choose the name, you have to include all the committee members, or you have to do a view only link. That's all
Correct.
it is, yes.
Correct. So I will figure out how to do that and I will make that happen. I didn't realize that didn't happen automatically when I include it in the agenda, but I will take care of it. And you are correct. The board has not made any changes. The board has not agreed to any changes, but they did ask for everybody on the board to go in and take a look. And one board member has to date. And but I gave the board a deadline. I think it's early February. I have to go back and check. But it can be, or maybe it was March. I can't remember, but it was ample time because of the revision should be approved in time for these procedures to take effect so that new applicants, so the board can start to bring new applicants on board sooner rather than later, because we know when the term is ending. We know when both terms are ending now. Any other questions, comments? Everybody okay with that? Okay. All right, so the next was the status of state aid. So the governor's education-related proposals, an update on fully funding state aid. The latest projection, because of inflation and other costs, rose from about 1.9 billion for state aid, not to us, but just in general, to about 2.66 billion. And hopefully this will be addressed in the governor's executive budget proposal. I didn't know if Dr. Hines had a status on that. I know that Ms. Manuel,
So no status yet. I know we're speaking about it as colleagues in my quadrant in our next meeting, but nothing right now.
Okay. Well, sure.
I can just tell you from the draft runs of just foundation aid, they haven't posted others on the New York State site. We are slated for a 42% foundation aid increase from last year's numbers. So it does look, in addition to the state of the state, it does look like she's holding true to everything that she has been proposing if we just have the support of everyone else.
And
So-
I'm sorry, Deb, and just to add to what Julie is saying. So one of the things that we've been speaking about as superintendents is we want to be very cautious with that number.
Yes.
Clearly, that is really great news if it holds true. And not that I'm reluctant to share it with our administrators, but they're crafting their budgets right now. And if they perceive that we're going to get a 42% increase, potentially, they'll add to what they have. So again, Julie's 100% correct with what she's saying, though.
I'm putting asterisks behind it also. I propose. We know this all the way until it's approved, right? All of these numbers are funny until they're approved.
Totally.
And I know Ms. Manuel mentioned at one of the recent board meetings, it may even have been here in October, I don't think so, that we were going to get increased state aid. But I just wanted to let the task force know that that because of inflation, the overall dollar amount of foundation aid had increased significantly. And so we'll just keep an eye on it, but this task force should know that we definitely are keeping an eye, and the public should know we definitely are keeping an eye on this, and we do want to be part of the conversation. It does not look like the foundation aid formula is going to be changed in time for our budget this year. But we are meeting with all of our elected officials to let them know what our needs are and to impress upon them. In fact, I heard somebody, I watched an audio from the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association, and they mentioned the wealthy North Shore districts and how we didn't have to worry so much about state aid. And I just wanted to scream at the screen and say, you don't understand. So this perception persists. And fortunately with Jack Martin, with Senator Martins, he knows our district. And we'll just remind him about the needs that we have, and certainly with Assemblywoman Salitti. Okay, any comments about the status of state aid, item number 6? Okay, item number 7, the foundation aid formula revisions. I mentioned earlier that state ed wanted to get involved in that. And so just to give a little summary, in December, as part of the annual state budget proposal, the Board of Regents requested $1 million to hire researchers who would review feedback from the schools, advocates, and funding experts on how officials should change the foundation aid formula for the 24-25 school year. So the Board of Regents is now on board with this. And we could reach out to Regent Tillis to say, hey, we've been talking about this for years and years and years. He's not been on our party list. If anybody thinks that would be a good thing, I can surely add him to our list. It's just a thought. And also this past November, Columbia University Center for Educational Equity issued a report calling for the creation of a permanent commission, I'm reading from my notes, to ensure the formula is updated and reflective of student needs today. The governor is reviewing all requests ahead of her own budget proposal, but we don't know whether she supports these initiatives. So we've been talking about reworking foundation aid for years now. Does anybody think it is a good use of our time to reach out to Regent Tillis, given that now the Board of Regents is asking for money to review this issue? Or should we stick with our state legislators? Any thoughts? Should I table that issue? Julie? And I'm sorry, I can't see everybody. If hands are being raised, I'm sorry, I can't see everybody.
Right. Oh, Diane, you have your hand up first. Go ahead, Diane.
No, I was just going to ask, is there any reason not to include him?
I'm leaving it up to this group to tell me what you want me to do.
I don't see any. He theoretically is the person that should be advocating on behalf of us, and he's obviously familiar with all of us and, in our district and the issues. So why not keep him in the loop at least, even if he's not going to be, why not? That's my question. Does anyone think there's a reason why not? He is pretty influential.
And I know
aware.
We talked about wanting to have a seat at the table. And so if this is money that the Board of Regents gets and they can start this initiative and they're going to review feedback from schools and advocates, my thought was we want Port Washington to, because it's something we've been doing for such a long time.
I think always include Roger.
So I guess here's my issue, and Larry kind of hinted at it, right? We can write a letter, and all of these letters, or we can have these conversations, and they go in a pile. And we are one school district, and we are not the only school district advocating it. So, for example, the State of the State came out last week, right, where the governor outlines her executive budget. Since that time, large groups of coalitions have been sending out their 10-point priorities. They've been banding together. So you've got the New York State Education Conference Board, which is ASBO, the Big Fives, the School Superintendent Council, the New York State PTA, New York School Boards, NYSET, Superintendents of New York State, Then you have the council putting theirs out. NYSBA put their 10 legislative priorities, and of them, or their 3 top priorities that they really want the legislators to focus on in this year's budget. And the top priority for all of these organizations who have banded together is to write their proposal for foundation aid and have their call to action in there, right? So instead of writing all of these independent things, we also do have the Nassau Suffolk School Board Association, and that is a large organization as well, that maybe if Port Washington interjects themselves into a little bit more, and we say, let's partner to write, or even all the North Shore schools, to write our 3 legislative priorities for this year's fiscal budget, wouldn't that carry a bigger stick? And if we were the school district to champion and spearhead, it gives us still that position at the table, right? To kind of carry it forward. I just want to see us use our time effectively and efficiently. So if the whole rest of the world is writing these top 3 to 10 legislative priorities, why don't we just put the 3 priorities together and band together with our partnering neighbors? Or Larry's raising his hand now, he's going to tell me Nassau Suffolk's already doing all of this, but let's jump into this bandwagon and not just be a small fish in a big pond.
Thoughts?
So, Julie's right, Nassau Suffolk is dealing with this. The only suggestion I would make is you may want to reach out to Bob Vecchio, who is the executive director of Nassau Suffolk, who would be happy to meet with this group. He's happy to meet with any group, and give him the lay of, he knows Port Washington pretty well because he knows me, but to have more formal representation, a more formal discussion with him so that he understands, some of the needs here. I know he's familiar with the town. Might be a better use of time than just writing a letter.
I agree with Larry.
And I'm not sure you won't necessarily want to wait till our next meeting in March. You may just want to have a subcommittee meet with him, or just have him meet with the board, or just have him meet with the superintendent, or just have him meet with, some smaller subset, because it's probably incredibly hard to get this many people together on a short notice, even on long notice.
It is hard to get 4 of us together.
Yes.
It's been fun.
And I'll be seeing Bob tonight, so I can pre-warn him.
Thoughts from anybody other than Larry, Emily, and Julie on?
I just had a question. A question. It's Sandra. From what Julie was saying as far as a coalition, and I believe you guys discussed this last year during one of the meetings, that I think Julie and Emily mentioned that you had gone to something where Brentwood voiced a lot, and I don't remember what you attended. I just remember the conversation. And in that conversation, did Brentwood was a standalone district, or were they in part of a coalition? Like, your suggestion is a great point as far as banding similar schools together. I'm just curious if schools have already kind of done that.
You're directing the question to Julie or Emily. I don't.
Who attended that?
I wasn't part.
It was a Foundation Aid roundtable, which was attended by all school districts coming together, meeting with Senator Mayer. So we were all acting as a coalition to some degree, with each individual school district sharing their stories. Brentwood is a tremendous school district, a coalition in and of itself, right? Yeah. So they're very different in that regard.
Yep. So
Brentwood is extremely large and extremely needy, so they are sort of a coalition to them in and of themselves.
So when you gave that suggestion, Julie, is it because just from the potential benefit of it, or you've already seen something similar that we're not discussing?
No, I think numbers speak louder, right?
Of course.
One, and I think we all saw that by those foundation aid roundtables, numbers speak louder. I'm also seeing, again, this is a normal trend. The normal trend is that the governor produces her proposed state of the state, right, with her proposed executive budget, and everyone now starts to rally for what they want. And it appears that ASBO doesn't act by themselves and NISBA doesn't act by themselves. They are starting to, even those big coalitions, come together and form partnerships and start reiterating the same, top priorities, so that those voices and those priorities are the loudest, right? So I think I'm personally am seeing it play out. So again, I think that we would be stronger from a Long Island or Nassau County or Nassau Suffolk to play out in a more coalition-esque arena, as opposed to just individual letter writing at this point. Especially with time. We don't have a lot of time before April 1st, right? When the budget is approved. And a lot of the issues we should be the loudest at right now are the ones that have a budgetary impact for us, or that will have a budgetary impact for next year, and we don't want to delay anymore.
Which is why I've been scurrying to get the meetings with the legislators.
So just to go over, these coalitions and these groups are basically giving the overall parameters. The tweaking for our local district, the tweaking for what makes us unique or what makes us needs, is what is done by our locally elected representatives, because they're the people they're the people who are raising their hand on the budget. They're the people who are in the budget negotiations. They're the people who are given basically, you can direct this amount of funding, where you think it needs to go. So us trying to tell the governor of our unique needs is less effective of a use of time than telling our assemblywoman and our state senator what our needs are, because they're the people who are talking to the people who are actually making the decisions.
Well,
And they're pre-prepped, again, as Julie said, they're pre-prepped by all of these organizations going, okay, we have to deal with the foundation formula. We have to do this, we have to do that. Then the question is, when they're setting up these commissions and everything else, well, then it's a turn of our local legislators to say, wait a minute, we need representation from Long Island. We need representation from this. We need representation from that. We need to hear these voices. And that becomes their job.
So the suggestion on the table is to try to band together as a school district with these other organizations. We as a school district, as a school board, I guess we're represented by the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association and the NISBA. But do we want to, if I understand Julie correctly, do we want to, as our own school district, join in with these other organizations? Do I understand you correctly, Julie? Yes.
One of the things you may want to look at is, for example, Dr. Hines' quadrant meetings with the similarly stated school districts. The board may want to try to set something up similarly with the quadrant boards and have a little, a smaller group that has more similar needs, but may not be the needs of the larger group. And again, then have sort of a voice. So that might be something you want to look at setting up.
My question there is, well, do we want to be linked with the schools in our quadrant, most of which are not similar to us in terms of our demographics and our needs? Does that hurt us in any way? I'm posing the question. I'm thinking out loud.
I know that would be a Dr. Hines question, because he knows these people and knows what their thoughts are and knows what their philosophy are.
Yeah, and it's good hearing your voice, Larry. So I actually think it's a good idea. I think it's important that the school districts in different capacities. So for instance, high school principals in the quadrant meet, superintendents in the quadrant meet. Why wouldn't we do the same? I think we will find a lot of similarities and we'll see some differences, but I think, as Julie has said over and over again, I think more voices together, I think, is really important. So I don't think it's a bad idea at all.
Okay, we will take this recommendation to the full school board. Yes? Everybody okay with that?
And you know what? You may start a trend. You may see other quadrants then do the same. If it's happening here first. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already, to be honest with you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say on that issue? Or anything related to item 7, foundation aid formula? Okay, great. Okay, so item 8, status of updating piece of the pie presentation. So this was discussed at the January 22nd, so over a year ago, legislative task force meeting. I don't know, I know there are people here who were very involved in working on this incredible presentation. I was just asking for a status update. Has anything been done to update this presentation, which I think was from around 2017, and the data in it certainly is older than 2017 because of the nature.
Updated, Deb. It's been updated before 20. I mean, I think the updated version is also on the website. So I'm not sure what
Version that I found on the website had had old data from either 2017 or 2015.
I think there's a newer version, but again, I don't know what the point of updating the presentation is, even if it hasn't. What are we doing with it? Like, I don't,
First,
we
if you
did
could
update it, we did update it when we discussed it last year because we used it for our meetings with our legislators.
Okay, if you could, I could not find that link, so if you could help me find it, that would be great. The reason for, and I can share it with the rest of the task force. The reason
Started last year, I looked for it.
I'm sorry?
I think that everybody was sent the presentation. We actually went over it, I think, at a meeting. I mean, again, these are all, everybody knows that I don't remember things very well, so.
Okay, well, I included the link that I found, I included it on the agenda.
I'll look
And-
for the update. I know that the update was done. I will look for it.
Thank you. And so the reason I was talking about the update is because if we're asking for the foundation aid formula to be revised so that we can use the most current data. And my thinking was that if we are going to continue to use the piece of the pie presentation as Representative Port Washington, it's incumbent upon us to present our current data.
Right, so what we've done in the past, Deborah, so what you should do is then give it to Ms. Manuel and have her update the numbers, because it's really just a question of updating the enrollment numbers, updating the ENL number. I mean, in the past, we've used the office to help us with that number. So it's just a question, like you said, of updating the numbers. I don't know if you're proposing that we use it for a foundation aid discussion. I think that's a bigger discussion. I think that this committee can actually have on, are we still behind the concept of changing the foundation aid formula the way we had proposed in that presentation. So outside of the numbers, I think the question really is, we had talked about median versus mean. We had talked about, so those are the things that I think this committee can maybe dive into and ask ourselves, and then ask our administrators, is that still something that we want to keep going for? Because that's the question for foundation aid, that's changing the formula. And if that is part of the legislative priorities for organizations such as NYSSBA, then we should have our priority, also kind of set. So that's just those are my suggestions. I think we should ask, like, are we still behind changing the formula, regardless of what Brentwood is going to say? So I know, Sandra, you brought up, and I agree, like, there is going to be disadvantages to changing the formula because you have to look at the hold harmless and really, like, who would be affected negatively on it. That's definitely a problem. And I think that's where Julie's point earlier and Larry's is that us on our own really doesn't help us as much as us maybe banning with our neighboring school districts. And, in our quadrant to say, we've always been lumped in as the non-needy. We've always been lumped in as the affluent school districts because we're the Gold Coast you know, and I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that everybody understands we're not. So what the different, and that is what I think we should be concentrating on.
Yes, but I heard you say you didn't know if we still wanted to change the formula.
Asking the, well, I don't know that this committee's said anything. Like, do we want, like, are we still on the same track? Is this the way we should, right?
Yeah, may I ask a question with that? I know I'm just a community member. I believe,
No, you're
well, I'm a member of this task force, as I understand, but I'm also not on the board, and I've not been as involved as all of you, the majority of you on this. But I will say, when I first read this presentation, I was turned off by it. And reading the statistics and just seeing some of the information, and it's a great presentation. I understand the need for it and the value to Port Washington, but in lobbying efforts, it seems like the furthest reach possible, whereas a more tailored, updated initiative would be more pertinent to this task force. And I do propose changing, I'll say it, I do propose changing what the goal is of what we are backing for the foundation aid, because even the ASBA rep that you guys brought in last year said that one of the more focused right now, it seemed like, is just updating the census used, right? Just updating what data is actually used by New York State right now. And I think that this is maybe a numbers game, but if maybe I don't know her new name, Manuel. Okay. If she has, the numbers, for me with business, what is the biggest value quicker and really more effective? But I would like to see, if the census was changed, what difference does that make percentage wise with what we would get versus the mean versus the medium, right? So if changing the census gets us 30% increase sooner, that I just feel like that would be a better focus instead of changing the entire. I still agree with the quadrant. That's why I was asking more about what Julie was mentioning, and banding together. But I still believe banding together for the most effective, quicker potential. And that's the only reason why, even re-looking at the presentation, I mean, one of the points on the presentation was a fully funded, and if you present this, right, to any legislator you meet, they're going to be like, well, the governor already said that one of your points is going to be fully funded. We're already past that. So it just doesn't look as recent.
Okay, so the upshot of this is we need to figure out whether we want to advocate for the mean versus medium change, or the change in census, which I think the general feeling out there is that the data is old, and the change in the census is a universally, I think, promoted change, that we should not be using census. Census that is 20 years old. That message has gotten out there. I don't know about the mean versus median. I don't know that has the same kind of traction. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't advocate for it if we think it's the right thing to do as a school board, as a school district. Julie, your hand was raised.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure we're all clear on terminology. The consumer price index is the number that has not been updated since the beginning of time in the foundation aid formula, right? And then there is no inclusion of enrollment numbers in the foundation aid formula, which is two of the hot topics. And then the mean versus the median discussion has to deal with the tax cap formula, which is a whole nother discussion and a whole nother level of advocacy that can be introduced into this conversation. But this is so large, right? I just want to always make sure that we're all clear on what formulas we're talking about and the terminology for each. So I just wanted to point that out.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Julie. And so
I'm sorry, Deb. Wait, I have a question. I'm
Yeah.
looking at Ron thinking it's me. And it has to do with Julie's comment. And Julie's gonna laugh when I ask this. Hey, Julie, is there a flow chart that we could have for that? Meaning, even if you wrote it on the back of a napkin, because I really feel like whenever you discuss it, and I've been here for a long time with you discussing it, that it's like, there's A, there's B, there's C, and people are like, 1, 2, 3, and no one really gets it. I mean, not this group, I'm just saying in general. It would just be helpful because it is 5 different things that come together. They are 5 different things that come together. And I feel like it's lumped together and no one really gets it.
They all impact each other. Listen, I think the
Correct.
fact of the matter is they both have an impact each other. It's a good idea, Adrian, right? And the reality of it is, I think that's actually what the original, listen, when the presentation from 2017 was created, and I was not a part of that presentation, Emily can speak to that better. The intent, and maybe even Deb, I think you were part of that group then too. And Michelle Duran, yes, she definitely can. The intention of that presentation was very different than the conversation we're all having now. And I think that's Emily's point, is that every time we have a conversation about foundation aid, you really can't go back to whatever you did in 2014 or 2015. We have to start fresh and new. We can potentially use certain graphs to show a historical perspective, but every day things are changing, and our greatest leap in change has occurred with the fact that it has been fully funded, right? And so everyone is jumping on the bandwagon that the governor is behind setting the record straight and getting us to a strong foundation with foundation aid. So I think the point Emily is trying to bring up, that maybe we need to frame our conversation as from the beginning. What are our priorities? And what Sandra's bringing up also, what are our priorities when looking at foundation aid? Because some of the priorities that have been discussed in the past are no longer relevant. And then back to the list of our priorities, if we would like to incorporate a discussion about the tax levy formula, which we have not really discussed this year as this committee, then that is another conversation that we can bring in as a discussion point, as one of our bulleted priorities for this year.
Beautifully summarized, Julie. Thank you. That is exactly the point.
So I raised this because updating the piece of the pie presentation was discussed in January 2022, and I was just trying to close the loop on that. So if the action item is not to update that particular slide deck, let's just say it served its purpose and maybe it needs to be just archived, and to move forward, Julie's giving me a thumbs up, to move forward with what is our priority now, given the changed landscape. So maybe Julie, if you could frame an action step.
I think this committee needs to be asked these questions that Julie just said. That's a discussion for this committee. What are we proposing? What do we want to accomplish? And I think, Deb, we've set up these meetings with our legislators, and we are in the process of being in budget season, but I think that's really the topic that we should have spent some time on today, is to discuss, what is our goals? Like, other than introducing ourselves to Jack Martins, what are we telling him? Are we telling him that as a committee, we want to talk more about the changes we want to see in Albany with regards to, because Julie's right, foundation aid has been fully funded, will be fully funded, but the formula has not changed. The formula is what we need to be discussing. And, what does he know about it? What does he plan on doing? I mean, that's what I would ask him. What does he plan on doing? How do we get involved in the changing of the formula discussions? So, I think that's the action step, is that this committee sets up some sort of priorities, and that this committee then would propose them to the Board of Education, right? Who ultimately approves them. But we need to have a discussion about what do we want to change. Now, going back in time, we had not the entire committee worked on this piece of the pie. there was a subcommittee that Michelle was very active in, that Larry was part of, I believe, that discussed doing this and worked on this presentation, because it is a lot of busy work. And, just so that's what I think maybe we might want to talk about again, if we're talking about redoing a brand new approach and to picking a new topic for us to go hone in on.
Okay, well, in October, we did discuss priorities. We established our priorities, and the full board approved those priorities. But
But we're talking about, I'm talking in relation to this foundation aid.
so I think perhaps for March, we put it on the agenda, since that's our next meeting, how we want to attack the foundation aid formula issue. If that's okay with everybody. I know it's in March, but that's our next.
Deb,
Yeah.
would it make sense to maybe have a subcommittee start really thinking about that issue and what our priorities should be, so that in March we can say, hey, we've looked at these issues at foundation aid, we've looked at the formula again. We think, given our community, these really should be our priorities, rather than starting to discuss them then. I think we need a group really focused on it that meets before March, because waiting till March, we won't get anything done in time to send to anyone.
Love it. Love the idea. Who is going to be on that subcommittee?
I will be.
Michelle.
And the step before this is making sure we have the most accurate, up-to-date data, because I think the question that I've heard, which is how much of a factor is like where we fit in this regional grouping, right? If the regional cost index is still an important part of the formula, do we consider ourselves to be part of this region, or are we more similar to other regions in how our district looks, acts, and thinks? But I think we need the data first to really assess that, right?
Well, there's looking at that. And like one of the major things we've always noticed with the foundation aid formula was it looked at mean income as opposed to median income. And unlike a lot of our surrounding neighbors, our median income puts us more in the middle, whereas our mean income is way higher, because you have a few super like off the charts high earners. That brings your average up, but it doesn't necessarily affect, or it doesn't really reflect the community accurately. So
we need a subcommittee then. Michelle has volunteered.
can I have anyone join me on said
I'm
subcommittee?
happy to help as well.
Well, I love foundation aid and I love you, so I will do it.
Okay, Michelle, Sandra, and Julie, and Jessica.
Great.
So you all have, and I'm sure this obviously fits in line with the priorities that we outlined for the full board. So pretty sure we don't need the full board's approval for the subcommittee to go ahead, start its work, and get the data from the school district. If Julie wants to do that, since Julie works closely with Ms. Manuel anyway. I know I had asked for some of that data as well, so it should be readily available. Okay, great. We have 4 people on the subcommittee. If anybody changes their mind and wants to join the subcommittee, please reach out to whoever is going to be spearheading the subcommittee. I have a fuzzy feeling it might be Michelle, but you all decide. That's up to the 4 of you. And then you will bring a discussion recommendation. I will make sure to put this on the March agenda.
Okay, great.
Great, awesome, love that. Okay, very quickly, I just want to go through the next few things, which is really just informational, and then I want to get to community comments. Item number 10, NISBA has something called a virtual capital conference day. It's for school board members only. It's on Friday, February 10th. And it's just something to educate school board members who are members of NISBA about gaining perspective on the proposed legislative and spending priorities, getting an in-depth review of the executive budget proposal, having discussions with legislators and state policymakers, which were already ahead of that curve in many respects. And so I posted the agenda there just so people here can just see what the agenda is and understand what school board members are doing behind the scenes when you don't see us here doing this kind of stuff. There's always something. Lobby Day this year in Albany is in person, Wednesday, February 15th. I am unable to attend. We actually have a school board meeting the night before. Larry, I think you're going to go. but Lobby Day is an opportunity to join other school board colleagues in Albany. And, we're doing a lot of this work here at home. Not to say that I wouldn't want to go to Lobby Day if I could, I would, but I can't. I don't know if Julie or Emily is planning on going. I believe Larry Greenstein is going. So I just wanted to let this task force and the general public know that these things are happening in the background. There are webinars that I know I've been attending that's been given by NISBA and the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association about the budget, about the executive proposal, so forth. So just wanted to bring in more as an informational piece. And Larry, if you go and there's anything interesting, report back, let us know.
Will do. Again, it's in the meetings in Albany, or you probably get as much work done meeting locally. What you get up in Albany is a lot of the is a lot of the people on the committees who are not necessarily your local elected people. So you can meet with Sandy Mayer, for example, in Albany, where it's harder to meet with her down here, things like that. But your reps are really going to be your local people who you can meet in their local offices. But if you can get onto the Friday thing, that'll give you a lot of information, and you'll see where everybody else is and where everybody is planning on being, and again, to how Port Washington's goals align or are slightly different than the statewide goals, because again, the coalitions are all pushing a certain thing, but then when you meet with Miss Liddy and Mr. Martins, you want to say, but we're slightly different in this way. We want you to know this about us, so that again they can then bring that forward as things are going on and hope for the best.
Agreed and understood. Thank you. Any comments about number 10 or number 11 before I move on? Okay, number 12. So this was something that was brought up at the last budget committee meeting. I just wanted to put it on everybody's radar. It's not something that this task force is going to move forward yet. There was an issue with, there is a case currently pending in one of the New York State appellate courts where a school district, not ours, did not even attempt to comply with local zoning laws. And they got state ed approval to do what they wanted to do, but not local approval to do what they wanted to, was constructing a fence. And the locality, members of the locality pushed back against the failure to follow local zoning laws. And so it was suggested at the budget committee meeting that this task force take on the objective of speaking to our local officials in an attempt to change the law that requires school districts to follow local zoning laws. I think it's premature. I spoke to Julie about that. She agreed it was premature for this task force to take it on. So this is just a little status report to say, this is what happened in the budget committee meeting. It was brought to the full board. The full board agreed the task force should take it on. Julie and I spoke about it. I also spoke with Ms. Manuel about it, and it's premature right now. So this is a status update. So nobody here is being asked to do anything yet about that issue. And just want to make sure everybody understands that it's not being forgotten or neglected. It's just on hold right now. Okay, yes, good. I just put miscellaneous in the news that the Board of Regents is proposing a new formula that would reimburse districts for CTE costs. I don't know whether those costs will be based on the wealth of the district or not, but this is a movement forward, and this district is so proactively trying to get students at Schreiber into CTE if they're not necessarily college bound or whatever their pathway. So I thought it was just something to keep on the back burner, that if this is something that does become legislation, that we're all aware of it. Any questions or comments about that? Nothing for this task force to do, just informational. Okay, so now I will go to community comments. If everybody here is okay. I've raced through, I tried to pack in a whole lot. Jessica.
Yes, hi, thanks. I I just wanted to raise a potential item for new business. I know there's been some talk, about sort of paring down our priorities to those that will be most effective. But one thing that has been on my radar is the universal free meals legislation that's on the table in the New York State Senate. There are some legislative promises among New York State senators to revive the bill. And it is being backed by a very powerful, and if you look at their hit rate, very effective lobby group. So, I'm wondering if that's something that this task force would consider advocating for or addressing in some way with our state legislators, particularly in that upcoming meeting with Senator Martins. We all know the benefits of universal free meals. The research is robust and shows that stigma-free universal free meals support students in any number of ways, from academic performance to behavior to a reduction in disciplinary referrals. So putting it out there to this group, what do you think?
That is a priority of Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association. It's on our list, and is something that people seem to be pushing for, and is probably something we would want, if it comes to a vote, probably something we would want our legislators to support.
I will also say NYSBA is supporting it, as are the New York State school superintendents have added it as well. It is a very hot topic that has been getting a lot of traction.
So procedurally, I just want to say that I think that we can, when at our meeting on Friday, which is tomorrow, I believe, correct? Are we meeting tomorrow? Yes. Ask Senator Martins if he is familiar with this initiative, if he supports this initiative. I think procedurally we can inform him that we know that Nassau Suffolk is supporting it. Like, just said, I don't have to repeat it again. But that I do not think procedurally this committee can, or we, the three that are going to meet with Senator Martins, can say, and Paul Washington wants it to go. So I think, we could kind of make the questions and the statements the way we know them. And I think we can then go back to the board and report to the board that we asked, and that Senator Martins supports or doesn't support. What does the board think? Like, I think procedurally. So I think, Jessica, you're right. I don't see a reason why the Board of Education would not support it. I don't see a reason why, Senator Martins wouldn't support it. I think it's definitely a positive for everybody in this sense, for constituent wise. But again, I think that's procedurally, I think that's how we can handle this suggestion. If everybody agrees on this committee to handle it that way.
I agree with you, and I can raise it formally with our next full school board meeting is the 31st of January.
And I think it could be part of our update, right, Deb? Because we're going to have a meeting, and then we can just say all that, right?
Yep, but also if we want the full board to give the thumbs up to us actually having a position on it and making it a priority, I can raise that with the full board and get that formal procedural step taken care of, check the box and get the approval. And I agree with your tact of informing Senator Martins about this tomorrow and getting it on his radar without formally saying, and this is a priority of the school district. Is everybody here okay with that? I see all heads nodding, yes, thumbs up. I don't see any no's. So great. We have an action step for that as well. Thank you for that new business idea, Jessica. Any other comments before I go to the public? Oh, Mr. Borda, yes, hello.
Good morning. I have a point of clarification. In this conversation about the mean versus the medium,
Yes.
how that conversation would impact upstate and all the school districts that really do have a tremendous influence on the state legislature. I mean, how is that balanced, or how this committee expects that to be balanced?
To be honest, I don't know right now. I haven't looked at it in probably since 2017 or 2018 when we were initially putting together our proposals. But I think right now we need to figure out what would be best for us. And then we can also look at how it would impact other districts and other areas. And, you know, just so we're armed with that, but just because it doesn't work for other people doesn't mean we can't say it's what works best for us. And I imagine that in a lot of places where you don't have sort of outsized like earners, the median and the mean are going to be fairly close. Meaning if you don't have someone really pulling up the mean, it won't really impact you to move to a median.
The districts upstate, I mean, are struggling from their own issues too. You know, the question of fairness goes along. There are districts who are still under hold harmless from the original foundation formula. So, you know, when they do these things, there's generally nobody's going to lose money as a result of this. If you're overfunded now, you're going to stay overfunded. You're just not going to grow at the same rate. And so foundation formula's been around for how long, and there are still districts that are operating under the original hold harmless. So, you know, unfortunately, the reality is what it really requires is an even bigger pie to make everybody happy. But that brings its own set of issues, because education is still one of the biggest drivers of the budget as it stands now. And the question is how much more can it be driven to give everybody exactly what they need? But but you know, as a local entity, Port Washington's job is to advocate for Port Washington. Long Island's job is to advocate for Long Island. There are people upstate advocating for upstate, and certainly as a statewide organization, NYSBA is trying to look at the entire thing and come up with something that's fair for all of its members. So, you know, and then, you know, National School Board is trying to look at the way federal education dollars are distributed. But, you know, as a task force and as a local entity, you know, concentrate on what you can concentrate on.
Yeah, and I suspect that's what the Board of Regents is also thinking, because they certainly know they represent everybody and why they want the money to hire the researchers and then go to, I guess, the different regions to figure this all out. But I agree. I think Port Washington has to look out for Port Washington also, because we know us the best. And I suspect that the state legislature or the Board of Regents or the governor, whoever's tasked with this, is not going to, is very mindful of the fact that we are just one of many, many hundreds of school districts. So,
and we have a governor who is, unlike many previous governors, is not from a large downstate area. So, you know, she certainly understands the needs of her constituencies upstate. So she, you know, and she might be less familiar with the needs of us downstate.
So we have our subcommittee. Mr. Border, do you want to be on that subcommittee, or you just wanted to make the comment?
Thanks. No, I just wanted to make the comment.
Okay. I didn't. Okay. Yes, Julie?
Yeah, Deb, I know you keep trying to go to community comments. I just wanted to give one other quick update, if you have a second, from this. Our list of priorities also included the civil service, fixing the civil service, the entire process, basically, right? So I just wanted to point out, for those that may not realize it, that in the state of the state, the governor has made that a priority as well. And many of the points that we have been talking about amending, Deb has it right there, she has outlined as well as a priority. And additionally, New York State superintendents have gotten on board, and that is one of their top priorities as well. And they are all hitting the same bullet points that we are. So I'm bringing that to head for this committee, because we talked about making an impact in the conversations with different quadrant leaders and moving it out. And it does seem that, again, it has gained some traction as well. So I just thought I'd share that from that perspective.
I think Julie, you're right. And I think we should definitely capitalize upon that in our discussion tomorrow with Senator Martins. I also think we should say, we were ahead of the curve. We were talking about this last year. So we should take some credit for making some noise. But I think that should be added to our agenda with the senator tomorrow to let him know that we wholeheartedly support, and we would like for him to support the governor's efforts on that.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yes, there was a lot that was outlined. There was also the mental health investments, about $1 billion statewide in mental health. There was a lot that was covered in her proposal that we hope to see in the budget. And yeah, thank you for adding that.
But she's still, unfortunately, on the mental health, she didn't lift a cap. It's for lower need people so far, right? So our argument has always been it should be expended for all. Unfortunately, that needle did not move as much as we had hoped, at least in these preliminary discussions.
Yes.
And that is something we should discuss with the senator tomorrow.
Yes, I think I outlined the list of priorities. The two of I CC'd both of you on the letter. I believe that's in the letter to his to Ms. Salgado. Yeah, the only thing that wasn't in the letter was this new issue about the universal free meals. But I didn't want him. I wanted him the senator to be fully prepared, just as I had done with Assemblywoman Salidi, and gave a whole big book. Okay. Any other comments? All right, let's go to community comments. Okay, you out there who have been so patient. Excuse me. Any community comments?
I don't see
I
any
see
hands.
3 members in attendance. I don't see any hands going up. Just for the record, I see Denise Paredes, Liz Melman, and Theodore Chofan, and I see a hand up. Ms. Chofan, I'm going to lower your hand and I'm going to allow you to speak. You should have the mic now, yes?
Hi there. Thank you for taking my question. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what I'm up to in the coming days. Meeting with lots of Nassau County GOP representatives, the chairman, the town of North Hempstead committee chairman. So do you have any input for me, any questions, anything I should advocate for going forward? I'm just open to any suggestions. Thank you. And you could also reach me at my email as well, which is my last name @gmail.com if you want to speak privately. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a generous offer. It sounds like a very broad conversation. I'm not quite sure what the legislative task force would be able to ask you to share or say. Does anybody have any thoughts? Anything you would like Ms. Chofan to share? The only thing I would say is you can share whatever you've heard here. You're at liberty, this is a public meeting, so you're at liberty to share whatever you think appropriate that you have heard here during discussions. I think that's fair to say. Anything you wanted to glean from it. I don't know of anything else that I think legally we would ask you to share, but certainly whatever you've heard here today. Okay.
Thank you so much. It's my thinking is how do we, build a better future for our students, for our district, and in light of the current crisis with our representation in Congress, I do want to make sure that we are all spoken for, all of us here in our area who voted in our district, largely in the town of North Hempstead in the 3rd Congressional District. And I just, was hoping to make it very clear that this is not good. And this is not something that we actually wanted and voted for. And I'm advocating for more action to be taken on the part of the Nassau County GOP because I think that they can. So, specifically talking about Joe Cairo and Frank Maroney and, many others, Anthony Desposito, who has sort of stepped forward to state that he will offer us representation, though that I don't see how that could technically work. So, any kind of thoughts and suggestions, because I'm willing to ask the hard questions and I'm willing to follow up on them with the Nassau County GOP. So thank you so much. And certainly I will definitely try and think about how I can present anything I heard today to support that argument.
Thank you, Ms. Chilfayan. I hear what you're saying now publicly. I knew this privately, but I wasn't going to assume anything and say anything publicly. What was said here today is that we're on hold, that until we see a better time, which we don't know when that will be, we're proceeding with meeting with all of our representatives, but we have put a hold on meeting with our federal representative. And that obviously means that we can't move forward with whatever we would be able to on the federal level. I think that's a fair statement from what was said here today. And that's a fair statement for you to communicate. And you also heard here that the Nassau School Boards Association, the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association seems to have taken a similar position. More than that, I don't feel at liberty to say this on behalf of the task force or the school board.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Okay, thank you for asking. Let's see. Oops, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to raise my own hand. I have to go back to, does anybody else who is in the attendees have any comments? Okay, I see none. Anybody else here before we sign off? Just to make sure everybody knows our next meeting, I'll put it on the agenda. Oh my goodness, I lost it. I think it's March, I want to say 9th, but it'll be on the calendar. I thought I had put the meeting dates here and I apologize now if I don't see them.
It is
Mr. Borda? Right. It is the 9th. Okay, thank you. Mr. Borda?
Yes, since Ms. Chilfayan asked for suggestions, this I don't think has anything to do with right now with the legislative task force, but if she's speaking to all these state people, maybe she should discuss with them where do they stand on the tri-borough amendment law and the Taylor law, and what will be the future of that. So that's a suggestion for a different type of conversation. Thank you.
So that's something that's this task force has not.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I as chairperson feel comfortable without this task force having.
No, it's just a suggestion for Ms. Chilfayan.
Okay, so not on behalf of the.
No, just for since she wanted to know what she could discuss with them.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Deb, it's
Yes.
Adrienne. I'm sorry I can't come on, but
okay.
I have to say that I am very uncomfortable with a member of the public. I appreciate her offer, but I am very uncomfortable with anybody who is not on the board on this task force and has the endorsement of you as the chair and the other members to speak on behalf of the task force. And I just want to make it clear, because I don't feel that it was clear, no shade to you or George. I'm just saying, I think it really, because it's being recorded, has to be very clear that nobody from this meeting has been given, authority, clearance, whatever, or been asked to represent this body to anyone. That's it. I'm not the lawyer, but I need it to be clear.
Thank you for raising that. I was simply trying to summarize what I thought was said here. Ms. Chilfayan, I think, understands that she does not represent the school district or the legislative task force, but that she simply can repeat the discussion that she heard here And if anybody has any questions, they can always go to the recording. But I agree with
course.
you. We're making it
That's
clear.
what I heard, but I
Sure.
felt the need to summarize it because it was said in bits and pieces, and I felt like one big long sentence would help me feel comfortable. So thank you
Yes.
for allowing that.
Of course, and I agree with you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Ms. Brooks, if I can say, I totally agree with you. But I just want to make sure that what I said is in response to a request by a member of the school district, right? That you wanted to know. It's not an endorsement from anyone here or suggestions coming from this board, but she's a parent and she lives in the district, and there is something called freedom of expression. She is in no way mandated to represent anyone or any legislative committee, but this is a public meeting and she's making a public comment. So Ms. Adrienne Kane should not be so worried about it. But thank you for the comment anyway.
You know what, George? I'm really appreciative of what you feel that I'm worried about, but I'm not. I needed it to be clear that nobody should represent the board, this body, and I understood that you were helping her.
I was
Just with
helping her.
suggestions, as you are very helpful
wait,
as
wait.
usual.
Ms. Kane.
So we're all good, George, but I appreciate it, so thank you.
May I ask a
Helping,
question?
I was just making a suggestion
I know.
to her.
It
So,
had
but
nothing to
I'm-
do with your comment. My comment
Okay.
had nothing to do with yours. I totally understood. You were very clear.
Now I feel better. I feel better.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
We're good.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ms. Kane.
George.
Okay. Sandra,
Just
yes.
Just a question,
Yes.
possibly for the update in the charter. Because I will say on my own end, that I myself am confused on appropriate comments back to community members as a task member. Because while I appreciate freedom of speech, I have a lot of speech. I also was confused on Mr. Border's comment, considering that is not one of the items we as a task force ever discuss, because right now we are all on the panel and representing those. Right now, as I see us on a panel, that we are part of the task force. So I'm not sure, I would suggest possibly a discussion would be of how, as a committee, as a task force, we respond representing to the task force. Because I was confused on the response back, not on freedom of speech. I understand that clause. But as a representative, because that wasn't something we discussed at all at any meeting within the past year and a half that I've been part of this task force. So just clarity on that, possibly in the next March meeting.
Sure, when we review the charter, I've made a note. I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
I do. Okay, thank you all for being here. I knew I had an ambitious agenda, but I thought this was a really important meeting, given that the March meeting is before we find out about all this other stuff, but this really was the meaty meeting. So I appreciate everybody staying on here. I'm always available. If anybody has any questions, I know a lot of people had to drop off. I will type up the minutes as best as I can and circulate them for everybody's approval and get them approved by the full board. Anything else before we sign off? I can adjourn this meeting then. And see you on March. Have a great February break. For those of you who can take advantage of it, enjoy your kids. They grow up quickly. And thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.